Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. And we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Monday. It is February the 10th, and some of you are probably moving a little bit slower. I guess there was a football game last night. I didn't watch it, so we're going to find out who won in a second. I guess I'm going to ask Garrett O'Boy. He seems like a football kind of guy. At least he would know what it is. Probably played football when he was younger. We're going to bring him on because there's something that's been happening in the background that we're kind of aware of, and I think a lot of you are starting to see it as well. The FBI's subversion of the Trump agenda. It's not just the types of people that have been hiring. It's not just the executives. The frontline agents have been working to subvert the agenda that was set up to get rid of illegal aliens, to enforce federal law in this country. And I think that's really problematic. So we're going to have a long form discussion about that. He also wrote a recent Substack post about the villain in the X-Men series. The guy's name is Magneto. He's kind of the criminal mastermind that runs the other side, and casting him as a hero. And I think that the exploration of that is salient for what we're talking about today, the way that we're looking at the federal government and who we consider to be the bad guys, how quickly the tables have turned there. So we're going to get into some of that as well. I want to talk about federal judges that are trying to block Donald Trump's orders. Just kind of the general sense. It's kind of a cultural Monday, I suppose, because the Super Bowl is a cultural event as much as it is a sports event. And so it's worth kind of talking about that. Also, the prediction is that Philadelphia would have riots and things destroyed whether they won or lost. And I think that was the only one that was 100% certain that did actually happen. All right, before we get into any of the other kind of wild stuff that's going on right now, I want to talk about one of our new sponsors. You guys can see it. It's on the wall over me. That is my Faraday bag that is rolled up. It is ready for deployment for work. And I wanted to let you guys know the next one that I'm going to be getting is this E3 bag. It is a really neat technology. And so we're going to talk about some of the stuff that are the benefits there between government and big tech and corporate America and criminals. You always know that your privacy could be compromised 24/7. There's basically nothing you can do other than protect yourself. You got to start by taking care and ownership of your own data and responsibility. For that, it starts with Silent, spelled SLNT. They make a Faraday product, a number of them actually, that block incoming and outgoing signals so that your devices are invisible and safe from the outside world. It also keeps you insulated from the outside world, which is kind of nice sometimes when you want to turn it all off. From their backpacks to phone sleeves, even pants with patented signal blocking technology, they can block wireless signals that are going to give you peace of mind that your data is not ending up in the wrong hands, and also that you can just have some quiet time if you want to while still holding on to your devices. You just place your device inside, you close it, and that's it. You're safeguarded from unauthorized access. You can go silent at slnt.com/Kyle. You'll save 15%. You'll get free shipping on qualified orders. You can stay ahead and secure in your privacy today. That's slnt.com/KYLE for 15% off and free shipping on qualified orders. You're seeing right there is their E3 Everyday Faraday backpack. It's got really, really neat removable sleeves that snap into place with magnets and hooks. It's my next purchase, no questions asked. It is an everyday sort of option to be able to carry your regular stuff and then also secure your information. If you guys are interested in checking them out, they're not the cheapest products, but they work, which is more than you can say from most commercial Faraday stuff. I used to test them when I was an FBI agent. They actually make stuff for the military. They make sleeves that'll keep your solar generators or even your other generators safe from EMP. A lot of really cool technologies. Check out their website, slnt.com/Kyle. Save that 15%. Let's get into it. Let's get my buddy Garrett on here. All right, without too much further ado, let's bring the man on. Garrett, you got to unmute yourself, and there you are. Good morning. Happy Monday to you, my friend.
Kyle Seraphin. Kyle Seraphin.
Who says that? Who talks like that?
Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
What a weird time, right? Because he's now in the administration.
Yeah, it is weird. It's a very weird time. It's probably a good time to be back on your show. So thanks for having me again.
It's my pleasure. Garrett, I want to introduce you to some of the audience, which is we've picked up since the last time we've had you on, and they may recognize your name, but don't know why I talk about you all the time. Maybe it's because I talk to you every single day, and I assume everybody else knows what's going up with GOB Actual. First of all, you can follow Garrett, GOB Actual. That's his handle on all the social medias. Will you give like a 3-paragraph description of why your name has come into the public and what your situation is currently?
Sure. So I am a suspended indefinitely forever without pay FBI agent. I am into my 30th month of this odd journey. And when I was an actual FBI agent, and when Kyle was an actual FBI agent, that is when our paths first crossed. And in a large way, that's why we're still here today. And so we got a lawsuit going, an IG complaint, an internal appeal. But now we have a new administration, so I don't know how much any of that is even going to matter. But I have not quite rotted off the vine yet, although I was probably getting close. But at this point, it's like, well, I can hold on a little bit longer. And then before all that, I was a police officer for a handful of years and just outside of Milwaukee. Before that, I was an infantryman in the United States Army for about 6 years. Went to Iraq and Afghanistan for a year each. I'm a dad, a husband, a Christian, and I have no boys. I have all girls. So pray for me.
That's the warrior curse, right?
It is. I went to a funeral in April. You'll know this, but a friend of mine I went to Iraq with, he took his own life, and a handful of us decided to go. And I think for the most part, none of us had really seen each other for the better part of a decade, maybe a little longer. And one of the guys there who I hadn't seen since I left Alaska, which was actually, no, I saw him a couple times in Kentucky because he went to the 101st as well. But we were talking, I had no kids back then and just catching up. And I told him, and the first thing he said, he's like, infantryman's curse. It's a good
pretty classic. If you know, you know, guys who tend to be the most aggressive and martial also for some reason seem to have a lot of girls in their life. We got a lot of estrogen surrounding us. Will you refresh the audience memory a couple of maybe just the wave tops of a couple of the big whistleblower disclosures that you participated in, so that, you know, there's always the question of, you know, what did you do when things were going wrong? And I think a lot of people don't understand that story. So anytime I get an opportunity to refresh people's minds, I want to hit that. Obviously, you testify in front of weaponization, but give people kind of a couple of the whistleblower disclosures that you brought forward.
Yeah, some of the big ones to me that stand out are the school boards issue. So there was that threat tag, EDU officials, and the FBI, like you mentioned in the intro, they're doing it again. They're subverting the other parts of government, the parts that they're supposed to be beholden to as far as oversight goes, or as far as an administration goes. But for this threat tag regarding the school boards and parents and labeling them domestic terrorists, they weren't turning over any information, and so I was privy to some of that, and I turned that over to Congress. And then another big one was another threat tag. Oddly enough, was the threats to SCOTUS 2022, and that one initially it seemed fine. It seemed kosher because the initial piece of the guidance they sent out said, because we saw threats to Justice Kavanaugh and other conservative Supreme Court justices, especially because of the leaked Dobbs decision. And so they sent out this threat tag and they said, yeah, it's federal law that you can't threaten a federal judge. And it's like, okay, yeah, all good. But then you keep reading, and then it's all about pro-lifers and what type of attacks are they planning, and what's, you know, what are they doing? What is the pro-life movement doing? Who are they targeting now? What type of clinics? What type of doctors? And I had worked on a case that was like that, where it was a pro-life guy who was targeting abortion doctors, and So I was pretty familiar with this type of thing, but the way that they pitched it, it's like this isn't happening. Why are we? It's not, it wasn't some pro-life guy who traveled from California, most of the way across the nation to try to kill Justice Kavanaugh. That was a pro-choice guy. So I don't know. It just was, to me, it just stood out as an abuse of authority to try to monitor the pro-life people more. So that was another one.
I want to just kind of hone in on the fact that we're talking about the school board decision. That's one of the priorities that Pam Bondi says she wants to look into with her weaponization sort of, assessment of the Justice Department. So that's one of the 7 that she claimed. Whistleblower retaliation, you're clearly a victim of that, as am I. So we got that kind of on there. This one you're talking about is kind of like using the FACE Act in a weaponized fashion to only go after pro-lifers. That's one of the 7. And so of those, and then the last one was the Catholic document, which I don't know that you had any specific piece in, but if you add the 4 of those up, 4 of the 7, 3 of the 7, like we're participating in this national reckoning of our ex-girlfriend of the FBI. And, we're like, you're just a regular dad, just like I am. And it's, I don't know. I keep having these reflective moments where I sit back and go like, what a weird group. Like we didn't work together in the Bureau.
Nope.
We almost did.
Almost.
Before they removed us. I think some people don't know that, but Garrett and I, you've just gotten some files back from the Bureau showing some of the communications that you and I had when we were on duty towards the tail end of my time and I guess of yours as well. Mm-hmm. You want to tell people what they showed? Because it's kind of funny to reflect on that moment, which I've sort of forgotten almost.
Yeah, it is funny. So they sent me what is called the agency file, which it's really interesting because my clearance has been revoked since July. And I mean, there's just so much to unpack right there because almost 2 years ago, it was, I want to say April of 2023, when Jen Moore testified in the deposition that she was saying that they were almost complete with my issue or whatever, but they weren't even close. And then she did again 2 days before she retired in June of 2023, and again saying, yeah, I think they're wrapping it up. Well, it still took over another year for them to finally revoke my clearance. And then 6 months after that, I finally get this agency file because as part of the internal appeal, we said, yeah, we want to appeal this revocation. We don't think it's accurate. We don't think it should have happened. Excuse me. Sorry. But they're supposed to send you this agency file. Well, they finally do. It's on a CD-ROM, which it's like, who has a disk drive these days? Which is just ridiculous. So I had to borrow an old laptop from my in-laws, and then I was able to eventually get it onto my computer just by dragging and dropping through various programs. And so I finally start looking through this thing, and lo and behold, I come across a chat between me and you, and it's like, oh, of course they're going to stick this in here. And it's even funny that their whole point was to try to draw a connection between us, and it's like, okay, we weren't secretive about this connection.
Nope.
And so for those who don't know, it's kind of like instant messenger. It's through Skype though. And it's called a link chat. And so where Kyle and I are messaging back and forth about potentially trying out for this new surveillance unit that the FBI was creating. And then I didn't remember this, but it must have been a Friday because, and I don't remember even now, even though I looked at it last week, if it was you or me, but one of us said, oh yeah, standard federal Friday stuff around here. I'd rather just be at the range, and it was just normal conversation. We talked about the essay that they required us write for that tryout and things of that nature. Nothing nefarious at all, but they stuff it in there like, oh, these two guys are working together. And it's like,
yeah, we were working together to critique your write-up so that you could try out for a team that I wanted to get on as well. Mostly because we had determined at that point in time that we weren't going to be able to stay in the office we were in because of whistleblowing activity, which we shared, which is even, that wasn't the thing that we were talking about, but how funny that they went and did that. All right. I'm going to give you the choice. This is player's choice right now, Garrett. We're going to talk about your Substack, which you called the cost of discipleship. I think that's a cultural issue that is relevant right now in the moment of a White House faith office and some other things. And then the second thing is I've got some news stories, and they also refer to what's been going on with the general government resistance to Trump's agenda. I'm finding out that people in the Pentagon right now, 2-star and 3-star generals, are pushing back against the gender guidance. They're trying to subvert that. We've got the FBI that's now leaking information about ICE, and you're still in conversations with a lot of different FBI agents that I no longer can stomach talking to. So which one would you like to do? You want to do the cultural cost of discipleship first, or do you want to end with that?
Let's end there, I think, because some of these topics you've mentioned are part of that problem and part of the weakness of believers, especially, but pretty much anybody in society who wants to move forward. So I think that might be a good way to bring it home culturally.
Okay, good. Well, we're going to start with a little video clip here. And this is a video clip that came from Norah O'Donnell, CBS, talking about clearances. Because one of the things that Donald Trump has started doing is revoking the clearances left and right of people that he, one, doesn't like, but two, doesn't think should be in positions of trust, kind of like they took yours.
Yep.
And so here is, there's a cry from the left that these government officials no longer have access to sensitive information. And here's the justification. Joe Biden did the same thing. So this is fair turnabout in my opinion, but we're going to kind of evaluate this and kind of move down a little line of some of the changes that are being resisted.
Let me ask you then something that you do have oversight of as president. Should former President Trump still receive intelligence briefings?
I think not.
Why not?
Because of his erratic behavior unrelated to the insurrection.
I mean, you've called him an existential threat. You've called him dangerous. You've called him reckless.
Yeah, I have, and I believe it.
What's your worst fear if he continues to get these intelligence briefings?
I'd rather not speculate out loud. I just think that there is no need for him to have that intelligence briefing. What value is giving him an intelligence briefing? What impact does he have at all, other than the fact he might slip and say something?
What are the requirements in order to hold a security clearance? Do you remember? There's a couple little pieces.
I'd have to pull them up, but
one of them is need to know.
Yeah, need to know.
Right.
Yeah,
There's a background investigation that's on file. A need to know. I feel like there's a couple little pieces to it, but the need to know is kind of what Joe Biden is referencing right there. What need would a Joe Biden have, or would anyone else that is no longer in federal service have to hold on to these clearances, other than they can profit from them and kind of abuse it on national television, it seems like?
Yeah, that's really the only need, and that's all they're after. And that's one of the things that they really try to hold on to when they leave federal service, whether it's they're leaving on their own volition or they're retiring, and because they can go and work in the same, especially in the DC metro area, and make a pretty good living still holding on to that government clearance, because it costs companies. A private company could get you a clearance, but they've got to go through government. It costs them a lot of money to do. And so they don't. So they like to hire people who already have them. Mm-hmm. But in this instance, and quite frankly, what Joe Biden is saying there is fine. That is in line with the current case law. That's in line with how the security clearance works right now. So, hey, new guy's in. He's the president. The courts are the ones going back to the 80s who have said we give the executive basically wide shrift over the security clearance. That's the main argument of our case, is that shouldn't be. The judiciary should have a little bit more stake in it when things like this happen, when weaponization with the security clearance happens. And it's kind of like, well, maybe you should have worked a little quicker on my case to get it through, because now we're probably going to get to a point where we just remove ourselves, and then somebody who wants to cry weaponization from Donald Trump, well, then they can start from square one. But also the way it works right now, Donald Trump can basically hand out security clearances on a whim and take them on a whim. And we have our judiciary to thank for that.
This is was it a Supreme Court case, or was it an MSPB case, Navy versus Egan?
It did end up going all the way up to Supreme Court, and they basically kicked it back down and said, we don't want to touch this. So figure it out.
The case is Navy versus Egan, EGAN, if you guys want to go read that just for your own grins. The other thing that's been happening is, again, like any of the norms that would have been established for pretty much all of American history, most of human history as well, are being reinforced. I feel like we're getting a rollback, maybe like as much as 16 years. I'm kind of hopeful that we see like an Obergefell change, only because it's like I have no problem with people being with each other, but you can't call it marriage in my book. And that's just because of the way that I believe the definition of the word has always been. We've been trying to roll back norms so aggressively, it's time to grab it back. This is really funny. This is a clip. I don't know if you've seen this. There's a guy named Sarah McBride. And yeah, I just say it's a guy. Is it Sarah McBride? I think it is. That is from Delaware, new congressman, who dresses like a woman. Let me just double check that it's Sarah McBride. Yeah, Sarah McBride. And so he was introduced for his first time to get up and speak. And per the rules of Speaker Johnson, good for him, he was listed as being a man in the way that you would expect a man to be addressed. And even though he dresses like sort of like a bizarre female. So this is about 13 or 14 seconds of the new normal. If you want to look like a freak, you get to. Nobody's going to stop you from looking like that, but we're not going to participate in your delusion. This seems pretty natural and funny. This got all kinds of people, both on the right and the sort of sensitive version of the right that is like, oh, don't be mean to people. It's not mean to acknowledge reality. And I think that's what we're kind of seeing is this backswing. So enjoy this little clip. This is just make you kind of chuckle.
Recognizes the gentleman from Delaware, Mr. McBride, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When I was elected, I promised to work with anyone who would help Delaware.
Dude, what?
Isn't that funny?
What the heck is wrong with people in Delaware?
Well, yeah, that they elected this person. And listen, it goes broader to this concept that there are people that think that their version of reality, which doesn't have to be tethered to real reality, that they should be affirmed in what they want and what they believe outside of whether or not it provides any value, outside of whether it actually represents the truth. So I've got a funny little clip here because this Doge conversation has been going on for the last 2 weeks. We've seen it basically since Trump walked in. And the Doge conversation, I want to start with a little bit of humorous look at it because it does relate to the FBI question. The question is, how many federal workers are actually doing anything of value that are getting paid by U.S. taxpayer dollars and then adding value to the taxpayer that is paying them? What is the percentage? What do you think the percentage is?
In my experience, I would say probably 25% at most who you're like, that person's doing a good job. That person, they're busy, they have a good attitude, they have good morale, they help with morale, they work hard, they come early and stay late if they have to, and they are generally a pleasure to work with and be around. 25% max in my experience. And I would say that almost across the board. Local government, maybe it was a little bit higher. I feel like on our police shifts, it was higher than that for the most. You're always going to get your duds, no doubt. But but as far as feds, man, yeah, federal service, 25% max for me. I mean, maybe if I spent a little more time thinking on it, maybe that number would change a little bit, but
no, it's close to the 80-20 rule. I think it makes sense. So this is a clip from The Big Bang Theory, which incidentally was a show that was written down the hallway from where I worked at Warner Brothers, which is a strange little connection I have to this. So I never liked this show, but I think this moment it's memed up. Okay, so if you're listening to it, there are three voices. The voice of the guy with the bowl cut, who I don't know, is playing a U.S. government employee, at least in this clip. That's how he's labeled. There's the guy, Sheldon, who's like the super nerdy guy that's kind of autistic-y, and he is Doge. And then the last voice you're going to hear is the voice of foreign government, who is saying you should take it and run. Okay, so just enjoy this as kind of like a jazzed up version of what's going on right now in all over the halls of federal government. And then I'm going to play you kind of the crying that's happening on the real media.
Oh, about my job. I want you to tell me I'm good at what I do.
You're obviously good at what you do.
Then why are you always ripping on me?
Oh, I understand the confusion. Now, I have never said that you are not good at what you do. It's just that what you do is not worth doing.
It's nicer than anything he's ever said to me. I'd take it and run.
This is the moment that's happening in government right now. Everyone is realizing that, yeah, you're good at what you do. You're good at giving away money. You're good at operating on behalf of foreign governments. You're good at bribing off media officials to be able to get positive narrative for what you're doing. It's just not something that's worth doing to the taxpayer that's paying it.
Yes. I forget why this came up into my head, but I didn't mention it because I didn't remember the details fully, but it was with Steve on AMRAD. We were talking about government waste, whatever. And that story you've told about the people wearing the lab coats.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just briefly refresh me on that? Because I just remember thinking like, oh, how dumb this was.
It's perfect government. Yeah. So sometime in the late 90s, there were some people in the supply room at Washington field office for the FBI that wanted to get a uniform allowance because their clothes was apparently getting dirty unpacking boxes in the supply room. And so they requested it, and it was determined that because of their job code, there was no authorization for uniform allowances for that particular position. And so they continued to spend probably many hours going through the code and what wasn't allowed and what wasn't. And they determined that lab coats were something they could all buy for themselves. And they got them embroidered with their names and the division and the, like other little identifying things that were like fancy looking, even though there's no lab and there's no doctors in that building. And they determined that the lab coats were listed as office equipment and they weren't classified as a uniform. So they were actually something they could buy with their budget. And so they did. And then that was promptly corrected a couple years later. And so they didn't have any more lab coats. And so the people that got them in the late 90s wear them every flippin' day, including into the 2020s, because they wanted to show that the thing that they spent the money on, it was just kind of a screw you, like we needed these. And they were always bright white. They were never dirty. They never had smudges on them. They were never, it seemed to actually undermine their original statement, which is that their clothes got dirty and that's why they needed a uniform allowance. And by the way, it took me months to find out the answer to that question. But yeah, it's like a classic microcosm of government. It's like, why do you need it? It's because we want it. Does it serve any purpose? No, but we like it and we can, and the money's been allocated, so we're going to spend it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think back to when I was a young private in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
Every you know this from your time in the Air Force. Every Friday you're getting a safety brief. Don't drink and drive, whatever. Don't get into bar fights. Don't fight the locals. Don't go home with some local's wife. These things. And everybody breaks the rules every weekend anyways. And I remember though, especially on the Fridays that were payday, you would get the added bonus of don't spend all your money this weekend. Guys would do it. The guys who would do it are the government. And I just think of this era that we're in. And you've got all this pushback now coming from government. You got people whining and complaining. And then you got the so-called fourth estate who is supposed to be as best they can. I know we're going to lean one way or the other at some point. And we're a amalgamation, I guess, as you and Steve talked about on Friday, of our experiences and beliefs. And so sometimes we might veer left, sometimes we might veer right, sometimes we're going off the deep end, maybe in those ways. But the media is supposed to just give us the truth, report the facts. And now they just have gone deep end left, along with the bureaucrats in government.
I got a clip that's going to actually explain some of that. It used to be a thing called payola. This was the scandal that happened in the 60s and 70s. I actually had a book about that. My dad did. I remember seeing it on the shelf for many years. And it was the idea that they would pay radio stations to increase popularity of songs, even though there wasn't natural popularity. It was boosted. And so being able to pay off a DJ to get your song on the radio was actually eventually changed in law. This is exactly what happened with this U.S. aid money that's been going on with the Doge situation that they've been uncovering, that we've been lied to because we were told one thing and it wasn't another. Here's from the All In podcast.
The media, who are supposed to be this intermediary layer that's totally objective between the government and the people, were not independent at all, but had all kinds of hidden incentives. $8 million to Politico, several $1 million to the BBC. I think it's important to ask what's going on. And by the way, that also has historical context. This is exactly what happened in the 60s and 70s, where it turned out that record companies were paying DJs to pay songs. There was a huge set of lawsuits and trial cases, and the result was a change in the law, right? And we call that payola now, which is you cannot take this money without disclosing it. And so had this money been absorbed by these entities and actually disclosed, maybe we'd be okay. But Nick, I sent you a link. Maybe you can throw it on the screen.
That's the main part that I want to talk about there. We're going to get into even deeper because there's some of the other little upset nature that the political left has gotten into. I want to do a read for our sponsor here. It's kind of another thing that's out there in the world that you got to take care of. You got to make sure you're protecting not just your RF signals from your phones, but also your personal data. So we'll come right back to this because I got a couple of other funny little clips you're going to kick. I got clips of federal employees crying in public at state meetings and local meetings. So, Garrett, this will be kind of enjoyable for you, including some stuff on some of the major media. Before we do that, let's say thanks to our friends over at patriot-protect.com/Kyle. Again, so it's a couple different punctuations. patriot-protect.com/Kyle. The problem is right now there are AI systems across the internet, including things like China's DeepSeek, that are scanning public databases, sucking up all the information. They're looking for websites and databases and data brokers and building platforms on and all the information on millions of Americans, to include the OPM HAP and some other things. They're recording your name, your address, your phone numbers, your email, your work history, your relatives, anything that you publicly put out there, and anything that's been sucked up in the public sphere. They're sending this out, and they just sell it to anybody that wants to use it. It can be cyber criminals, it can be scammers, it can be foreign actors, and they use these tools to try to exploit you, defraud you, target you. Once they have their information, then changing your phone number or your email is not going to work. The Chinese Communist Party's watching, and so are people in this own country, and so are the Nigerian princes, apparently. If you guys want to try to protect yourself from this, Patriot Protect cuts off DeepSeek and other AI-based threats that scan the internet. Over 100 data brokers. It helps cut them off at the source. It reduces your footprint out there in the world and takes down your digital footprint so that people can't come and find you. If you guys want to go and check them out, it's an inexpensive solution for the year. It's 24/7 protection for about $5 a month. You get 15% off by using our promo code KYLE. And again, the website is patriot-protect.com/Kyle. There's a link in the show's description if you guys want to check them out. It's something we have. I'm still remiss. I still have to sign up my wife for this thing. And they gave me, they're like, hey, what's up? Your wife is getting calls from reporters? Yes, my wife continues to get calls from reporters, GOB. Emily got another one from that Washington Post guy. So I got to go out and figure out how to get that taken down. So it's not enough just to do it for yourself. Do it for your family members. I've got some funny videos. You ready for this? You want to enjoy a fun video with me?
I do. I love enjoying fun videos.
So, federal employee crying at a town hall meeting in Northern Virginia about being interviewed like the Bobs from the Office Space videos. Okay. And you want to do a quick, you remember the Bobs from Office Space? Mm-hmm. Give the setup of what that roughly looks like, because this guy's about to describe it as well. It'll be funny.
Was Bob the boss?
Well, the Bobs were the efficiency experts.
Oh yeah. We got the meme with the Bobs.
Yes,
I forget the actors' names, but they're the ones who they lean in and, what is it that you do here?
Yeah, with the mustache.
Yeah.
He was in Wall Street too. I can't remember. He was also in He He's fantastic. Yes, yeah. What is it you'd say?
Hilarious.
Okay, so here's some guy that's crying about having to explain what it is that he does here, and he sounds emotional about it. I mean, the audio is not great, but you guys will be able to hear it.
I was nervous and reticent to come up here and speak just for retaliation purposes. I just wanted to share some things that are going on at my agency. In the last week, we had Elon Musk in our building, and after he visited the building, he called for a 50% cut of the entire agency. My colleagues are getting 15-minute one-on-one check-ins with 19, 20, and 21-year-old college graduates asking to justify their existence. Supervisors are being told not to tell their staff anything, withhold information, and today we got word that supervisors must now fill out a justification form, and that there's going to be just a 30% rank and yank with all staff at my agency.
I didn't realize it too, because I thought the guy that's speaking was the one in the suit, because that's what I thought. He was like, oh, he's a fed. He showed up in a suit. No, it's a guy wearing like a hoodie, or he's wearing a sweatshirt, and he looks like Sheldon. He looks exactly like he sounds, like an effeminate, weak guy. What do you make of how hard would it have been for you to justify your job if interviewed in the same way when you work for the federal government?
I don't think it would have been that hard, and maybe this is overly prideful, but I think it's true. And I think even as a brand new agent, I got, what was the highest? Exemplary, whatever you could get.
I don't know. They changed it a couple times while we were there.
And I remember my boss pulling me in at the end of the year and saying something like, only like 3% of the FBI gets exemplary every year. And she's like, but you have been doing a great job. And I was like, oh, cool. And to me, I'm like, I'm just doing my best. That's how I approached work. Because believe it or not, Kyle, at one point, I was pretty stoked to be an FBI agent.
I know. That's the saddest thing about all this. Okay, I got another fun clip. I want to show you this because I do want to get to a handful of these only because they're amusing. This is Jen Psaki interviewing a lady who used to run a development team at Twitter. So what they've done is they've said, okay, Elon Musk is coming in and he's gutting the federal service. We're going to find people that he did the same thing to and show how they were victims. But I want you to reflect on the fact that she is crying about being in charge of a code development team. And when the new owner came in to buy the product, he lined up all the people that worked on the code and said, print off the code and tell me what you do here. And that was upsetting to them. And then I'm going to give you an idea of why this is actually acceptable, because I've got maybe the funniest video that proves that Doge is a fantastic idea. I think it's just, look, enjoy Jen Psaki. This is Ginger Goebbels doing her thing.
I just talked through about some of the very young, in some cases very problematic, given their posts, people that Musk is surrounding himself with to help carry out his plans. And does any of that surprise you about what we've learned about these people? And what else should federal employees know about the kind of people he seems to surround himself with?
I mean, sadly, no. I wish it were surprising, but again, it's sort of a very tired and old and boring playbook, right? Anybody with any sort of experience is not attracted to the kind of confusing and toxic work environment. I think it's very appealing to a certain kind of person. We saw it at Twitter as well. They were inexperienced engineers from his other companies, who even knows what the legality of that is, coming in and evaluating, my team's code, other people's code. We had to do performances of loyalty of literally printing out code, physically standing in line like we were about to be scolded by a teacher, and sitting there and having to justify our teams. And I'm hearing parallel stories, frankly, of multi-decade federal employees having to sit in front of a child and explain to a child why they shouldn't be fired. Not only is that demoralizing, it's insulting.
Yes, so this is a 19-year-old high school graduate who has used the unfortunate nickname Big Balls online. So that would be one way that we could refer to him. He is now working at Musk's behest.
Just like the Big Balls was already in the chat, so we just might as well throw it out there. Yeah, they're really upset that these are young people that have all these, ridiculous ideas. Like, you should be able to explain the code that your team works on.
Right. You should. That's why they, in theory, at least part of why they hired you. And the logical fallacies are abounding here. I don't care if you worked for multiple decades in the federal government. And she said, answering to a child. Well, if the child is smarter than you.
These are the same people that want children to be able to change their gender, by the way, and think that 16-year-olds should be able to vote. So suddenly children not having enough experience is a problem. Isn't that a little just rich on the irony level?
It really is. And I love how now places like MSNBC and Ginger Goebbels are, let's go find some former Twitter employees and pull them out and see what they have to say.
It's so toxic. Can I show you what toxicity has done in Elon Musk's workplace? Can I just show you? They just parallel parked a flippin' rocket again. Watch this thing. This is a rocket ship coming out of space that landed where it took off from on a, like I said, it's parallel parked in a tight spot. Watch this.
You can see how fast this vehicle is moving on the left hand. Landing burn has been ignited. We're now down to 3 Raptor engines. We can see those chopsticks now.
There's freaking chopsticks that catch a rocket.
Yeah.
Okay.
So awesome.
And by the way, that was not done by NASA. That's the thing that's the best. It was done by private individuals, probably like some dudes who had online handles that may have said some racist stuff on Reddit at some point in time because they're weirdos.
And I don't care. I don't care what you said on Reddit or whatever. That's not what Doge hired you for. And this SpaceX clip that you showed is perfect because the cheering that you're hearing from the people who have worked God only knows how many hours to get to that point, and for them to be so filled with joy and passion and love for what they're doing. And then at the same time, space exploration, and who knows where this is going to go. It's insane, and it's not government.
No.
And the answer is never government. And that is what Elon Musk is showing. That is what Doge is showing. And so I have this, and this is what we voted for. The majority, the royal we, to pull from Big Lebowski, this is what we voted for.
We did. What else did, I mean, like, it's super simple that there were all these things that were promised. One of them was government efficiency. I'm very confident that that was part of it. That's why they talked about it. There was like all this wild spending. They were going to bring in somebody who's got business acumen that's been doing this. The other thing we were kind of promised, correct me if I'm wrong, they were going to deport people that don't belong in this country, that are criminal aliens to the United States. Was that
100%? And this is a big piece of I think, or at least for me, this is a big piece why Donald Trump won, because of the overflow of illegals that were coming in. Sorry, I swallowed a bug, but apparently I forgot how to breathe today. But this is one of the best pieces. Get these violent criminals out of our country. They were already criminals when they came here because they broke our laws for how you're supposed to come here. And then the majority of the ones they're going after now are ones who only committed more crimes. Who wouldn't want those people out of this nation?
Well, people who work for the FBI. Let me just read a little bit of this headline. First of all, leaked document. This is from the LA Times. This is not from some random source. This is not a just trust me, bro. Leaked document says, quote unquote, large scale immigration enforcement action coming soon to Los Angeles. This was sent out on Friday. Federal law enforcement agents are planning to carry out a large scale immigration enforcement action in the Los Angeles area before the end of February, according to internal documents reviewed by the Times, which means these were actually straight up leaked. Kristi Noem has come out and said it was leaked from the FBI. The operation would be spearheaded by ICE, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, will focus on people who do not have legal status in the country or who are already pending orders of removal, according to the document circulated amongst some federal law enforcement officials. The best part is they said they're going to be leaning on FBI and DEA because they needed more people, more bodies, per the official that actually shared this with them. So that's going to be the context. A former federal law enforcement official said that they'd been informed about the recent preparations, but spoke on condition of anonymity, fearing retaliation for breaking at least the sensitive information disclosures. You and I have both had that allegation levied against us. It's a death sentence in federal employment. And says just because certain information is being given doesn't mean that it's the administration's plan, because they know some agents are going to be resistant, so say it this official. Let's talk about agents being resistant to enforcing the law that they are sworn to uphold. I'm very curious on what people inside the Bureau are saying about this right now.
Yeah, what I've heard from some field offices is that supervisors are straight up telling their people, if you have some sort of internal conviction or whatever, you don't have to participate in these. Sorry, people, that's not how this works. And I'm sure there are people who lean left would say, well, this is real rich coming from you guys. Okay, well, let's break that down a little bit. If you have an actual allegation that there's a violation of law, well, then you can whistleblow that. But this is for enforcing law that we have. So that's out the door. And so simply, if you just don't like it, sorry, that's not how it works. That's not how your employment works in the FBI or federal government. And then with this leak, I love this because you mentioned it, the allegation. So I say, okay, FBI, I levy the allegation against everybody who got these documents and suspend all their clearances until you find out the person who leaked them. Because
you could do a full stand down in the Los Angeles field office, which would be probably really problematic for national security in some ways. I guarantee there'd be some cartel cases that get let go. There'd be some national security threats that are being launched because there's a Chinese presence there. There's some terrorist activity that happens. Los Angeles is a big space and it's a big target. So there probably are some things that would be at risk, but at least you wouldn't be, putting ICE agents and DEA agents in danger by leaking the plan and setting these criminal organizations up to be able to resist more aggressively.
Right. To me, too, this is not that far afield from former FBI corruption that we know about, like Whitey Bulger. You had a corrupt FBI agent who, one, signed him on to be a source, and then two, funneled information to him so he could avoid getting caught for his own crimes and misdeeds. And the FBI kept that a secret for many years. There's there's a file in the SAC's office in the Boston field office that was under lock and key regarding all the Whitey Bulger stuff. And it took decades for finally some SAC to see it and say, I think that we've got some crime going on here. And, then most people probably know the story. But that's what's happening here in LA. You basically giving the criminals a heads up so they can avoid capture. I would have to go find it, but I bet you that that's a violation of law by whoever's doing that.
Oh, I'm certain of that. Yeah, if nothing else, they're violating. They're violating the handling of certain documents. It's one thing to show policy being violated, like this is a FBI policy and there's no sensitivity markings on it. LES, like if you're actually disclosing operations before it happens and you're giving documents showing how things are going to happen, you are in fact going to obstruct an ongoing investigation. That's pretty dangerous stuff. This is also something that California is doubling down on. The state of California has just voted in their legislature to approve $50 million to protect what CNN refers to as immigrants. We know them as illegal aliens or criminal aliens, because the people that are being targeted are not just random, quote unquote, immigrants or migrant workers, whatever it is that they want to frame it as. These are actually people who have committed additional violations of law in the United States, many of whom, as they said earlier, have deportation orders already against them for violating our laws while they were here after violating law to get here. Exactly. It's insane to me that California is going to basically go into debt, which it continues to do, to the tune of another $50 million to fight against Trump, against the needs and the interests of their own constituency.
Right.
Which is what this is.
It is. It's we're living in the upside down. And I know people who live in California, and I think are most people who live there this far gone? Gavin Newsom is an atrocity of a governor. Mm-hmm. This is nothing but fraud, waste, and abuse against the people there. And are most of them really okay with it? I guess I'm going to have to assume they must be, because they keep electing the guy even when they had the recall election. He allegedly won. I don't know if there's any funky business going on there or not, but living in flyover country, it blows my mind that this is happening, and you have this much resistance to the overall will of the people who, this is what we want. We want these people deported. The majority of Americans want these people gone.
They can't see it. They don't believe it. And maybe that's why they get away with doing stuff like this. This was an interesting little clip that I found. I think it's worth playing specifically because it's MSNBC saying that Mike Benz, who's been a guest on my program, who's visited my home, actually, of all things, Mike Benz, who is a brilliant guy and a 3, if not 4-dimensional thinker. I think he also thinks in space and time, and has constantly been a voice of reason, talking about where government shenanigans are, the blob, all kinds of intelligence apparatus working against the American people. He's being defamed, I think, pretty literally. And I think the more that we share this, the better his case is to be able to bring it if he wants to go out. He's being referred to as a self-proclaimed white nationalist.
What?
I've listened to him a lot, and I've never heard anything close to that. So listen to this. These are the same people that are saying we need to put $50 million. And by the way, in that piece from CNN, Gavin Newsom also signed a $2.5 billion package for fire relief in LA, and thinks that the federal government's going to pay for it, while trying to subvert the federal government, trying to do its actual job, which is defend the border. Here's them, calling out the U.S. aid thing, because wherever the shenanigans are, we're finding out that the people on the hard left are doubling down left and right. It gets weirder and weirder that they do this.
Week talking about USAID. It's a number one target for Donald Trump, for Elon Musk. Can we talk about where this war on USAID even came from?
It's crazy. So they didn't talk about this during the campaign. You didn't hear a word about
Not one.
USAID. I read about this just a couple days ago. In December, Joe Rogan has a guest on who's like a crazy right-winger, allegedly crazy, I guess I have to say, in this day and age, who is like a white nationalist, self-proclaimed white nationalist influencer. And he goes on and talks all about how the Foreign Service and USAID in particular is a hive of criminality, and he's a conspiracy theorist. And who's listening to Rogan in that episode? It's Elon Musk. This is the first time that Elon has heard of USAID. He picks it up right away, starts tweeting about it, and that's how it got here. It just is a line from Joe Rogan books this guest, Elon hears about it, And now, like you're saying, like millions of people are going to go without food and medicine because Rogan platformed a controversial thinker. Like how
wild is that?
Dude, he's got to sue MSNBC, plain and simple. I already forgot the guy's name, but he's spouting just pure lies.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Benz is not a self-proclaimed.
And that guy, by the way, is a producer. The voice you just heard is a man who's a producer for The Daily Show. So he's a producer for a comedy program that like makes fun of the news cycle. But you get the idea of just it's in the chat, actually, so I'll just throw it up there because it's actually true. I was thinking the same thing. What a smug asshole that guy is.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other way to explain it. To think that Elon Musk didn't have the at least awareness, maybe he didn't know the name of it, but he understood that foreign aid happens in the United States and it happens at a wild level and a huge amount of stuff goes out there. In any case, these people are so out of touch with reality. You can't help but just go like, how on earth do you defend this? And I got another one for you. Ready? This is from Fox. This is Stephen Miller. So he was at America First Legal. He's now the chief of staff for policy, deputy chief of staff for policy at the White House. And he's talking about the most simple thing. Imagine thinking you have a right to go to a job, Garrett, that you don't go to. Imagine if you were doing the job that you're doing right now. You're hanging out at home. You're working with your kids. You've got some charities you're involved in. You're doing a podcast. You're not showing up to be an FBI agent, but they just paid you as an FBI agent anyway. That's the basic federal employees that don't want to go back to work. They really like their gig. I mean, it must be nice.
Yeah.
And he's just talking about things that are utterly reasonable that normal people would go, yeah, this is bullshit. We don't want to do that.
After this expires at midnight on Monday, this offer for 8 months of paid vacation at the end of this term of their term, will it go to layoffs if people refuse to come back to the office? What comes next?
Well, of course, if people refuse to come back to the office, they're going to be laid off. I mean, why would federal taxpayers be subsidizing Netflix watching at home for so-called federal workers? In other words, how can you call yourself a federal worker if you never show up at the office? We have these giant cavernous office buildings in Washington, D.C., carved out of marble, stone, and granite in the Greek classical style, some of the most gorgeous buildings on earth. The taxpayers fund it, they pay for, they upkeep, they provide electricity to, and no one's showing up.
He's not wrong.
No.
People don't want to go to work and they still want to get paid. Must be nice.
It really is reflective of the same smug asshole attitude as the guy from the Daily Show, because it's the hubris, Kyle. We talk about that all the time. That is the linchpin sin for federal government, certainly for the FBI, is that utter hubris where they think. And then here, for these employees who don't want to go back to work, it's your hubris that is getting in the way because they think they're entitled to it. Because what? Because you've not gone to the office since COVID? It's 2025.
Get back to work. Everybody else did.
Yeah.
So, I put a little headline on the screen here for people to see, but there's a federal judge now in Boston, of all places. So a district judge in Boston is going to decide whether or not Donald Trump's federal buyout offer can actually go through. In other words, a federal judge is weighing in on how the chief executive of the United States is able to do that. You didn't see this kind of nonsense and these decisions happening in the same way. The only thing that I can think of that is similar was the injunction that happened in the Southern District of Texas against the Biden vaccine mandate, where they demanded that somebody inject something into their body in order to keep their job, which was not a qualification of their employment. In other words, they redefined what federal employment meant. I guarantee you the people that got hired on into those federal jobs were hired on into going into the office. You're talking about multi-decades of people going in, and suddenly it's a problem. It's mind-numbing to me that they're going to stand behind this stuff.
Absolutely, because this judge is, again, it's not dissimilar from the FBI person in LA who leaked the documents so these criminals could run free. Here you have a judge now subverting what the majority of people voted for. Donald Trump won in a relative landslide, at least in recent presidential election history. This is what people want. And then on top of it, you've got, I think the last number I saw was somewhere around 45,000 people who want to take the deal. So and this includes people from all walks, because I know people who are probably far more aligned with you and I who have told me, yeah, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take the severance deal, the fork. I'm going to take the fork and I'm going to fork right off. And
Can I play you why people want to do this and why they want to get out, or why Americans sort of are sick of this? Because I've got a really great clip, and I'm going to apologize to the audience right up front because these women are atrocious and their voices are really bad, but they represent all of this sort of like tone deaf inability to process what's happened around them, and they're still doing like 2021. Or they're doing 2017 or something, like the original Donald Trump resistance. It just doesn't hit the same way as it did back then. And even the people around them that used to believe them are sick of them. This is a song I think might be entitled Trust Black Women. It is two women singing on a street corner. They look like you think. They have shaved sides of their heads. They've got like kind of lesbian looking haircuts. They're dressed nicely. They're white ladies. They're probably educated. God forbid, they might be married. They're standing with a bullhorn singing the song in an urban area. And like I said, I'll apologize up front because this is evidence you have to have that there are still some people out there that think that they are making a point. Let them keep doing this, number one. But also, I'm going to have a rebuttal to it in a second. They refer to themselves as being mad as hell, I think. So here we go.
Trust black women, they lead the way. Trust black women, they lead the way. White women, stop abandoning your sisters. Trust black women, they lead the way. Oh, we're mad as hell. Oh, can't you tell? Oh, we're mad as hell. Can't you tell? We dissent, you fucking fascists.
That's as much as I need to be able to show you. So how out of touch is that? Now I'm going to give you the rebuttal. This is a lady who owns a business. It's got a bunch of swearing because apparently women now get out and just swear on social media and get really mad about it. But this is the rebuttal that I think so many Americans actually agree with. Whether or not they're on the political left or the political right, they don't like writing checks to the government that the government turns around and pays off the media or other countries or other things. And they're like, hey, what are you doing for your money? And why are you crying about having to go to the office? So are you ready for this? Because this one's going to feel like a little bit of a vindication. This could almost be a palate cleanse, except I got something funny instead. Here's a TikTok lady.
Sorry, I apologize for the way I look. I just worked all day. I run my own cleaning business. I am the sole cleaner. It is me. I do everything. I work my ass off to be able to provide for me and my husband. Our kids are grown, moved out. It's hard, you guys. It's hard to want to continue to do what we do. My husband has a business as well, and pay our taxes to a corrupt piece of shit government. It's hard. It's really hard. We owe a big chunk at the end of this month for last year's taxes. A big chunk. Tens of thousands of dollars. A big chunk. And at this point, I'm going to send them something, and it ain't going to be the fucking money I work my ass off for. So that Angelina motherfucking Jolie's bitch ass can go stand next to fucking Zelensky and take a fucking photo op. Or Ben motherfucking Stiller or Nancy fucking Pelosi. Fuck you. Fuck you all. Fuck, suck a dick. I fucking hate you. I hate the government. I hate celebrities. I fucking hate you. Like, what the actual fuck? We are being fucked, and more fucked every fucking day. And Democrats are on here talking shit about fucking Trump and Elon. You're welcome. You're fucking welcome. Because guess what? Without Trump and Elon, we wouldn't know this and it would continue to fucking happen. But that's okay because the big scary orange man isn't in office. Fuck you too.
Is she everybody right now?
Everybody's mad, which, I'm kind of here for it because
trust black women, just they lead the way. What about those ladies?
I like those ladies are saying, can't you tell that we're angry? No, I couldn't actually, because you're more concerned about your pitch and being in public. I like how the backdrop was the LGBTQ flag painted in the road.
Yeah, it's just the gay flag from here on out. We're not saying those acronyms.
And then the actual person who's pissed is the person who is working, that she's working hard and she's having to send tens of thousands of dollars, according to her, to the government. I don't blame her for being pissed like that.
It sucks when you start looking at your tax bill, which I'm doing right now, and you're like, I'm going to pay for this corrupt institution of people that send millions of dollars for for a transgender opera in a country that I'll never go to.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't want to send you any money.
Nope.
No, I want to send you I want to send you a bubble mailer full of dog poop. That's what I would like to send you.
Yes.
That's what you can do. That's what it seemed like she was alluding to do. It's really hard to listen. And anyway, so that was a little bit therapeutic. It's a little bit cathartic. And in the meantime, you got Donald Trump like figuring out like, hey, how do we save people money? It sounds like, right? And so the joke is that even during the Super Bowl, he was trying to figure that out. He literally sent this out on True Social during the Super Bowl, people. He said, for far too long, the United States has minted pennies, which literally cost us more than 2 cents. This is so wasteful. I've instructed my Secretary of the Treasury to stop producing new pennies. Let's rip out the waste in our government, our great nation's budget, even if it's 1 penny at a time. And then I found a little meme of Joe Biden. Those are the 0 cents pennies. No sense at all. But like, he's right. Like, what the hell do we do with pennies? People have been talking about it for a couple years. Why don't we do something about it? It's like, okay, he came in and did something about it. He's like, yeah, we're not going to make pennies anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody uses pennies. What do you do with pennies?
We've heard that for so long, and everybody thinks, why are we doing that? And then we still just do it. Well, we need new pennies. We need them. We need the flow of currency to include the mighty.
We've always done it that way, Garrett. We've always had pennies.
Oh, my favorite excuse. Well, we've always done it that way.
Mm-hmm.
The excuse of the dullard.
So let's get broader on that, because we're talking about kind of disposing of preconceived notions. And you had kind of an interesting take on it. This is the cultural piece. So, folks, now we're going to pivot to what Garrett's been writing about. If you've never followed his Substack, he told me not to promote it and to promote a Give, Send, Go, which we will do. But it's lastline.substack.com. You can follow him over there. You can become a paid subscriber if you want to help support the O'Boyle family, which I recommend you do as well. Garrett has 30 months now, no pay from the FBI?
Just about, yeah. Well, this ties into the crappy government piece. So I got suspended September 26, 2022, November 4th, I think it was, 2022. They notified me they were stopping my pay, but then I got paid through the final pay period of the year because of a clerical error on their part. So
I got charged $5,500 for medical benefits I didn't have because of a clerical error that I can't get away. I just got that bill from my parents the other day. They sent it to the wrong house.
Of course they did, because why wouldn't they? And yeah, I got bills along the way too for all sorts of crap and whatever. So it's been a little over 29 months I've been suspended, and a little over 25 that I've not gotten paid.
Okay. It's been a long time. You're thinking about things in different ways. You're challenging sort of preconceived notions. The story of the X-Men, Magneto's the bad guy. You wrote a 2-part Substack that I just finished reading this weekend about how he was a hero and the cost of discipleship. So this is the Christian pivot, turning things on its head. You want to set up the story and then kind of maybe summarize it. I'm going to refer people to go see it. You folks, you can read it for free, so you should. Yeah. And I'll share it out on social media as well, because I think it's worth reading. But summarize the position here of kind of turning things on their head like this.
Yeah, so it's free, like Kyle mentioned. I don't ever want to paywall it all the way, but my brain, I was talking to my wife, Heidi, about this last night. Just my brain kind of works. I don't know if it's a new way. I think in some ways it is. Certainly is a bizarre way. So I don't know, maybe a month ago, I started watching these X-Men movies. I like the X-Men growing up, and I'm kind of a nerd, to be honest. Maybe I don't know if people have realized that about me yet, but I was into Star Wars, X-Men, whatever. And so I start watching the live action X-Men movies, and as they go, there's a clip where Magneto, as you mentioned, the bad guy, or at least most of our life, he was projected as being the bad guy, but so basically it's this fictitious version of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and these mutants kind of reveal themselves in a broader way than ever before, and humans do what humans do best. They say, oh, we're afraid of them because they have powers, and we don't like things we're scared of, so let's kill them, because all these mutants are on an island. And Magneto's power is to basically manipulate metal. Anything that has any metal in it, he can manipulate. And so both Russia and the U.S. start firing their payload from the ocean towards this island that all the X-Men are at. And Magneto stops these rockets in the air, and he starts to turn them around, and he's going to send them back. And then the quote unquote good guy, Charles Xavier, aka Professor X, is pleading with him to not. And Magneto says, Well, Professor X says those are good, honest men who are just following orders. And Magneto says, I've been under, I forget exactly how he says, I've been, under the whim of men just following orders. Never again. And he throws him back, but he ends up just throwing him in the ocean. And when he said that, it immediately clicked. And I was like, oh, Magneto's been the good guy the whole time. And then as I kind of watched a couple more, there's other things that happen. Of course, he's not perfect. Nobody is. And, there are things he does that may be considered too far or too extreme. But then as I start kind of thinking of our faith in that way, I think of Jesus. And he was essentially killed for being too extreme, for being too radical, for being too preposterous, too out of control. And then as my brain continues to mull it over, because Magneto's origin story is he first was revealed to have these mutant powers as a young child when he was separated from his parents at a concentration camp. And so all these things start kind of melding together. I don't know if I've mentioned it on your show before, but Dietrich Bonhoeffer is a martyred Lutheran pastor from Germany. He was killed in a concentration camp. And maybe 6 months before I got suspended, I had finished reading a book called Bonhoeffer by a guy named Eric Metaxas. And it was very powerful for me. It's a very long book. I audiobooked it because I was driving a lot back then. And I didn't realize at the time how impactful it would be in the near term with everything we've been through. And as you've talked about many times, as we have another commonality, our trip as new FBI employees to the Holocaust Memorial Museum also kind of started bouncing around in my brain. And so all this started to come together. And one of Dietrich Bonhoeffer's books is called The Cost of Discipleship. And it basically is where he is arguing that most people who even profess Christ fall into the trap of cheap grace, which is love, just love everybody. And there's no discipleship, there's no repentance or obedience as long as you have love. Just love and preach the gospel. And this
was the late 90s, early 2000s, sort of like what they called compassionate conservatism, where people basically were soft and whatever you think is okay, and we want to accept people as they are and let them come to the table as they are. I've heard some evangelicals that are like calling Jesus the savior is actually really offensive to Muslim people that might be able to hear our message because they don't believe that. So we can't change. We have to change our beliefs so we can make them accessible to other people. And as you said, it actually follows this American idea of what I think is called suicidal empathy, which is that you are willing to be so gentle with other people who break the law in your own country. Going back to what we were talking about with the FBI leak, you're so gentle that you're willing to actually kill off your own people and put them at risk because you're so nice, you're so evolved. It's your burden to bear their mistakes that are dangerous to you. And it's really dangerous stuff. Obviously, we've seen what it's done in the last 20 years.
For sure. It is very dangerous. And I think especially for people who profess Christ, you've got to stop looking at Jesus as this calm, peaceful Savior who's holding the little sheep and he just loves everybody. Now, of course, the answer is yes, that he does love everybody, but we have this false sense and this false notion, or at least it has seeped into great degrees, that this false notion that love is just letting people be who they are. And in the two-part series, I get into what I call the woke church and or the weak church.
Both of which are real and both of which are ubiquitous at this point.
Absolutely. And the woke church is very easy to identify. I put a picture in there of a so-called reverend. I don't know what her denomination is, but she's got one of the white little collars.
It's a Roman collar. I'll describe it because the picture is great. It's a Roman collar that is made into a flag. So she has a flag across her throat where she would otherwise be wearing a Roman collar like a Catholic priest. Absurd. Right. I think she's an Episcopal something or other, clearly like dressed up like a lesbian activist. It's crazy, but
it is crazy.
I like your so-called reverend. You put air quotes in all of these for women that are in positions they don't belong in, which is not controversial until a few minutes ago.
Right. And
it's very new.
Be. It shouldn't be, because if you believe in God, if you believe in Christ, then you believe in the inerrancy of God's word. And God's word is very clear about certain things like sexual immorality, homosexuality, adultery, and women not being allowed to lead a church, to be an elder or a pastor. So I'm not ashamed to say those things because it's not me saying it. These are things that are literal in God's word. And so you have these reverends, and there's a couple female ones I referenced. There's an Episcopalian one, a Presbyterian one, I think something else in there. And this is that cheap grace where Bonhoeffer says costly grace is just that. It's costly. It may require some type of persecution. He wrote this book in 1937. He wasn't martyred until 1944. So when he wrote it, he didn't know that that ultimately his path was going to lead to death. But
he showed some principles right up front that he understood that there was going to be a cost. And then it turns out like his life, he lived those principles, which is something that, whether you're a red martyr or a white martyr, you sort of understand that. We haven't talked about that in this program in a while, but we'll do a whole thing about white martyrdom. White martyrdom means you didn't die, folks. It just means that you accepted consequences for standing up for something, whether it be your faith or your principles and so on. And I think that's stuff that you and I share in common. At least it's worth discomfort to be able to say that you were able to hold on to principle. And you're seeing the opposite of that. I think it ties into the Super Bowl. There were woke commercials on the Super Bowl. There were discussions of racism and all this other kind of nonsense. In fact, I actually think I have the damn, what do they call it? The Black National Anthem. I played it for you earlier, didn't I? Here, watch this. Like, we don't have another national anthem in this country. Black people are not a nation unto themselves inside the United States. And you and I served with black guys and white guys and Asian guys and Hispanic guys. And it doesn't freaking matter, guys.
Right.
Because who gives a shit what your skin color is if you're wearing the same uniform, you stand up for the same ideals. Meanwhile, the NFL is pushing this division, and they're using Christianity to do it, which I think that is a piece of the weak church to allow this. Here, I'm just going to play it real quick because this is what you'd expect to hear. Oh, say, can you see? And instead you got this.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring.
I mean, just give me an all-black choir and a black singer up there telling me that it's the Black National Anthem, but then make it act like it's my problem for seeing segregation at the Super Bowl, which is our biggest sporting event of the year.
You're the racist here, Kyle.
I'm the racist. Yeah. And using Christian trappings was the thing that made me realize that we should have this chat because, the funniest thing is that there's plenty of scripture and there's plenty of tradition of the devil using scripture to ensnare people. It's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go and I'm going to go after your best instincts and I'm going to use them against you. I'm going to literally weaponize scripture, hymns, or tradition against you. Mm-hmm. That's what I see this. That's why I thought that your piece was salient at the moment that people should go check out.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I had taken kind of a pause from Substack, but I've pumped out maybe 4 or 5 weeks in a row now. So it's something I'm trying to be studious with again, because it's probably the thing I enjoy the most in whatever this weird existence is for the Suspendables. But as much as I like hopping on with you and with Steve 3 times a week with Amrad and other things here and there, I really enjoy writing. I like it. I really do. I think I like it the most. I'm still doing the merch too here and there. And I like putting those designs together and stuff. But if I could pick just one, it would be the Substack and then maybe the occasional podcast. But I really like the exercise of, I mean, each one will take you maybe 10 minutes to read. They're not really that long. And I didn't go as deep as I could have. And I always get to a point where I'm like, I got to just wrap this up. It's getting too long. People aren't going to sit and read through this whole thing. But the amount of effort that I put in and study and research to kind of try to form my arguments is worth it for me. And it's something I really enjoy.
Yeah, well, it seems to be. And the other piece that's on there, cost of discipleship, I asked you about promoting your stuff and saying, hey, should we promote the merch store and so on and so forth? And the thing you said was no. why don't we promote a Give, Send, Go that is helping out? So even though you're without a job, even though you guys have no like stable source of income, that you're fighting this legal fight in order to be able to try to make case law. Folks, that's why Garrett doesn't have a job right now. He could walk away from the Bureau, but he would lose standing, we believe, in order to pursue this lawsuit. And in the meantime, this is the thing you told me to promote. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell the story of Angeline and who she is, and if people want to go there, the link is in the show description, folks. If you're hearing this, you can support this Substack. Garrett will give you a pitch for it right now.
Yeah, this is if you go to givesendgo.com/Angeline, ANGELINE. So my wife, because we are radical extremists, Kyle, she began volunteering at a pregnancy crisis center probably about a year ago, and Angeline came into her life as her second mentee, I guess, and she was meeting with her about once a week. And Angeline now has 2 kids, both real little. We actually have them here right now because we're trying to help her get on her feet, and she's taken some classes to get her CNA license. And so we've been helping watch her boys recently because the dad is no longer in the picture. It was not a healthy relationship. She's young; she's like 21 years old. And she's got a long road ahead, no doubt about it. We actually were out at her place maybe a week or 2 ago to help move in a table for her because she, right around Thanksgiving, her neighbor, there was like a cooking fire. He ended up dying. She found him because she could smell the smoke, and the fire damage was so bad that nobody was allowed to live in that complex anymore. And so
she lost her home.
And so she moved in with her mom, who lives in an apartment with Angeline's 2 brothers who are teenagers. She's got, then she had her latest son like a week or 2 after the fire. And so they're all living in a tiny apartment. And then the apartment complex, because it's like a couple of complexes that are owned by the same people right in the same area, they were able to get her into a different unit. So she's at least got that on her. She's back kind of on her own now with just the boys, but difficult situation. And I think she fully admits, like, hey, I made some poor decisions, and now I'm just trying to pick up the pieces. And it really does go to that cost of discipleship factor. Are you willing to, what are you willing to pay? I don't have the quote, but Bonhoeffer talks about how the cost that God paid his own son to be murdered at the hands of wicked rulers, wicked government, wicked people who wouldn't follow the truth. And so he was murdered for that on a cross. And he basically says, if it cost him so much, what's it going to cost you? And I think in a way, this is how we can live out our faith to some degree, especially in this bizarre time where I'm home by and large most of the time. Heidi's home because we've got our own little kids that we homeschool.
Right.
None of this is easy for anybody. Nobody would want to do this. But then if you go to, you mentioned some of these evangelical churches, and it really gets me going because you go to some of them and they got a brand new building that they're trying to pay off, and they got a barista and a cafe and everything's nice. And it really is the epitome oftentimes of that cheap grace. And I'm not saying those people don't do other things that are emblematic of living out their faith, but this is, at least for now, one way we're trying to do it. And yeah, if you are able and willing, givesendgo.com/Angeline and help her out, or help us help her and get her set up for success.
I want to hone in on the detail that I think is most relevant to the audience listening to this, because part of it is doing the thing that you believe. If you believe that that babies should be born and that they should have a chance to live in this world, the reason that she came into your life is because she was part of a crisis pregnancy center. My understanding is she was probably considering not having a second child, and obviously a lot of difficulties in her life. And what you guys are doing is supporting her decision to keep a baby in a very imperfect situation where, dad ran out and she probably made mistakes, as you said, but she's a woman who said, a baby's life is important, and you guys are affirming that decision. A lot of people say, yeah, I want to support, the choice for life, and that there shouldn't be a choice to kill off your kids. That comes with a consequence that some people are going to need financial support as well. We'll make a contribution on there too. I'm going to talk to my wife when we get off here because I read the story beforehand, but I wanted to hone in on that, it's the easiest thing in the world is to put money behind it. Does it cost you something? Yes, it does, but certainly not as much as living every day and being a mom, which is a thing that we're called to, she's called to do, obviously. And I'm sure she wouldn't begrudge the child that, but it's, supporting people in that hard decision. If it is a decision, if it's going to be a decision in this country, we have to give people the option to know that they're not alone in that. What a cute little kid too, by the way.
I know, right?
Is that her oldest son?
That's her oldest son. Yep. He's about 2 now.
And he's running around your house at the moment.
Yeah, they're here right now. So that's the picture that's up there. That's Jase and Angeline, and then her other son is named Alex. And so we'll see what they're up to when we wrap up. But it's been interesting, but it's good. I mean, I don't know. If you claim the faith, how do you show it? How do you live it? I think for us, our whistleblowing, willing to say, I'll accept the consequence for doing what's right because the government is doing what is wrong.
Well, and it's not an accident that you and I both understood that the FBI specifically, which was our entity that we had eyeballs into, was specifically targeting Christians. In my case, I was able to bring concrete information that the number 3 priority for national security in the state of New Mexico, which is a border state, was the FACE Act violations and anti-abortion violent extremists. You were seeing the same thing when they were talking about Supreme Court justices. So different threat categories, and yet the same thing was that they were looking for Christians who were going to be the problem. When your government starts targeting that religion, and they're obviously backwards. I also had a guy come forward, and he's willing to speak to it publicly now that we hope that Kash Patel will be confirmed this week. He said he'd be more than happy to share it. But they did an audit in the Civil Rights Division. I don't know if I've even told you this. The Civil Rights Division did an audit of all the cases they turned down that were FACE Act violation, and every single one that was a violent instance of leftists from Jane's Revenge, that group that was burning churches and pro-life pregnancy centers and so on, they were all turned down. Every damn one of them were turned down, where there was actual violence, where there was actual property damage, where there was actual danger to human life. Those things were all turned down because there's a leftist bent. And so our government does not care about what is best for you. It cares what's best for it, which tends to lean towards this leftist thing, which is why they're giving away plans for hunting down illegals in this country. We could do this longer. Let's do something funny on the way out. Does that sound fair to you?
That sounds great.
All right, tell people about AMRAD real quick, and then we'll do a funny thing and we'll laugh, because this is not that long ago. I'm talking about rolling back like 15, 20 years, and we'll get a joke about like this stuff used to be on national television. So I'll play you something in a sec, but give them the AMRAD pitch.
Yeah, AMRAD. I do the American Radicals podcast with Steve Friend. So you loyal listeners to the Kyle Seraphin Show, you know Steve well because he comes on pretty much every Friday for Friendly Friday. But I join Steve every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 10:30 Eastern. And I don't know what we're talking about tomorrow. I got to touch base with him today to
he does that to you all the time.
Yeah, I kind of like it though, because then I basically get like a cold response. Yeah, I think the people like that because we got
that's what I do on Friday.
I get the old boil meter going,
That's right. All right. Well, this is going to make you detox just a little bit. This is something from a national program that happened not too long ago. Let's wrap up with this. Apparently, this was a 2005 MTV program, and then it popped on, and it was some segment during it. My wife and I were giggling to the point where we would have like peed ourselves because this is so silly that this was only 20 years ago. This is obviously well within my lifetime, and something that used to go on. Let me just close off with a thanks to my buddies over at Shield Arms before we do. But I'll say bye to Garrett O'Boy. It's at GOB Actual over on X and on True Social. Follow him, and have a great day, bud.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Stay on the line here so you can see this video because you need to. All right. Before we disappear, shieldarms.com. They're my friends over in Big Fork, Montana. They make outstanding accessories for firearms. They make soft goods too. If you guys want to check out like their holsters, they have like sewn goods, chest rigs, and some of this kind of stuff. They've got slings that are outstanding. Promo code KYLE will save you 5% site-wide, including on their firearms. They make an outstanding upgraded version of the AR-15 that allows you to fold it in half. They also make magazines that are 50% more capacity for your small Glocks. Like I carry them every day. They have magazine extensions, so on. Check them out. American firearms manufacturer that does really great work in Montana, America. It is shieldarms.com. Again, promo code Kyle is our normal one. Okay, here's the palate cleanse. I don't know why this thing is so silly to me, but just the what would be referred to as absurd racism right now is just too funny not to. So here's your little palate cleanse going off into the start of your week after the Super Bowl.
We got to celebrate our differences.
I can't get over it. The guys singing Ching Chong Ching. They got little like Asian guys wearing these little like rice patty hats. It's so racist compared to what we would expect to be normal today. That was 20 years ago on national television. They were playing this kind of stuff. We used to have a sense of silliness, and we didn't have to just be so like fake compassionate about things. We could just be silly about it. And obviously, like, that's not what people in Africa look like. And it's not what Mexicans sound like. They're not even saying real things. They're just making goofy noises. And in the meantime, the message is that we all have to like get along. Ooga booga and chimichanga. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great week. I hope the start to the week is going to be good. We got a lot of stuff coming in. I think hopefully Kash Patel will be confirmed on Thursday, which will be a big step forward for the federal government. And obviously, we're going to start seeing some investigations into the FBI by people like the DHS. So the government is now pitted against the government because folks are listening to what the American people want. And they don't want leaked plans. They don't want chaotic subversion happening. Isn't that kind of the real insurrection? I don't know. All right. Have a great one. I look forward to seeing you guys again tomorrow at 0930. And you guys can always find us on the replays. Make sure you like the video. Catch you then. God bless.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.